Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, Michael, coming to you live from the New York Stock Exchange.
There you go. There you go. So, hey, one of the things I wanted to talk about is actually based on a video I did last night. I don't normally record videos Sunday evening. That's kind of my family time. But I frankly got frustrated, right? The CPI number has been underreported for as long as I can remember, but it irritates me because the rent equivalent has been so bad, right? Rent equivalent in the last CPI, if you haven't seen it, Greg, is 3.5%. The lowest single family rent increase I've seen reported in the last 30 days was 15%. So that 11.5% delta is significant. So what I did in that video yesterday, Greg, is I backed out the 3.5% input and then I added the 15%. And lo and behold, inflation is not 6.8, it is 10%. And that shocked me, just how bad it is. And yeah, so I wanted to talk about that because I think the Fed's got to get tough. They can't just jawbone. They've actually got to do stuff. So I wanted to talk about that with you today because, whoo, inflation is horrible.
Well, you know the old saying, just because they say it's true doesn't mean it is. And just because they say it's not doesn't mean it isn't.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so it's all, political Fed speak. We have elections coming up. Powell knows he's got a real problem on his hands. The Federal Reserve, they know there's a real problem on their hands, especially this time of year with what they do. All eyes are on them. And we're seeing, deleveraging events take place in advance of, Fed moves in anticipation of what the Fed's going to do. So, we got a little bit of a down day going on right now in risk assets and risk markets in anticipation of a move on the Fed's part. The question is, how forceful is he going to be when he comes out? And my guess is, based on what we've seen, it's going to be very mild. I think he's just going to come out, wow, we're going to continue our taper. Maybe we'll increase it a little bit. Maybe we'll look at a rate hike. They were originally talking about Q3. Maybe he'll say Q2, or he might say Q1. If he says Q1, and if he increases the taper any meaningful amount, you'll see a big drawdown start to happen as we go into the next couple of weeks. And, things will settle out a little bit before the end of the year. We might get a little Santa Claus rally, but, it'll be interesting to see what he actually says at the next meeting.
Yeah, Wednesday's a big day. Wednesday afternoon specifically. I actually think he talks before the market closes, which is going to be interesting. I think he's scheduled to talk 2 o'clock Eastern, which the market doesn't close till 4. So buckle up. It's going to be interesting. But yeah, what I've been thinking about, and I actually put a video out, I think last week, it might've been 2 weeks ago, about Jerome Powell has to become Paul Volcker. And what I mean by that is Paul Volcker is the last Fed president that I remember that didn't relent to market pain, right? Alan Greenspan, he created the Fed put, Janet Yellen, whoever was before Powell. It's just, Fed presidents, at least most of my adult life, have relented when the market froze up, right? When the market crashes, or doesn't even crash, it has a hissy fit. They have gone and pumped money in. Paul Volcker didn't. Paul Volcker said, we've got to break inflation. He stayed true for 18 months or 20 months. And frankly, he put us on a much better path. The pain was worse, but shorter term. And nope, the Fed's president since then haven't done that. So I'm curious, is Powell going to step up Wednesday and say, we're going to double, maybe even triple the Fed taper, right? Going from 5 and 10 to 15 to 30 billion less. And will he acknowledge Fed rate rises in the first half?
Well, I think the markets are telling you he's going to be a little bit more aggressive this time. That's what we're seeing today with risk asset, drawdowns today.
Yeah, what is going on
Mohammed
today?
El-Arian came out and
dude,
said
he slammed him.
He slammed him. He said, the Fed has lost all credibility, that transitory was the worst, inflation call ever in the history of the Fed. He said they are way too late to the party, that there's nothing they can do at this point to curb inflation. And it's coming at the worst time of the year. You have Christmas, you have tax season coming around. You still have, the pandemic wreaking havoc out there on the economy, supply chain, things like that. So, he is all over the Fed. But it's really interesting. Powell never seems to move big enough, fast enough, and I'm not sure what that's all about, but I think we're going to find out here next week.
Wednesday, or it's this week, Wednesday, 2 o'clock, I think. It's he has to. Here's the deal, right? If he doesn't, if he stays kind of centrist or dovish, inflation runs. I mean, if inflation is 10% now, I mean, we're not done accelerating, right? Even if you look at their numbers, it went from 5.1 to 6.2 to 6.8. Where does this damn thing stop, right? When you have helicopter money, $5 trillion of helicopter money thrown on an economy in an 18-month window, what the hell do you think happens, right? Everything goes up, hence the everything bubble. Add on top of that leverage, he's got to get in front of it. We have to have some short-term pain or this thing gets away from us and it gets ugly, ugly, ugly.
Well, I think at this point, being worried about going down as the worst Fed, president in history, I'm not sure he can change that at this point. I think he's painted himself into a corner where he might go down as the biggest disaster ever that's happened to the global economy, in terms of Fed policy.
Well, he has, I think Ilarion said this morning, he's got one last shot to save his reputation. It starts this week.
He has to be aggressive. And I don't think very many people think he's going to be aggressive. What we're seeing today with the markets is mild Fed speak.
Yes.
They're not pricing in aggressive behavior. If they were pricing in aggressive behavior, we'd be down double digits today.
Yeah. I want people to hear that again, right? Today might feel kind of, I just pulled it up while you were talking. Let me bring it back up. My damn phone. So the stock or Bitcoin's down 6%. Ethereum's down 8%. What is the stock market? Stock market's down about 1%.
Yeah. It looks big because of the numbers, it's 300 points or whatever, but it's 1%.
Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah. So it would be down 3, 4, 5%. Remember last March when we had these things called circuit breakers? Yeah, we would have circuit breaker days if people really thought Powell was going to get aggressive. So I don't know. So let's play predict the future. So I'm going to guess that the Fed doubles taper. That's what I'm going to call. So right now I think it's 5 and 10 billion, right? 5 billion of treasuries, 10 billion of mortgage back. I'm going to say they double. What do you think?
Probably because that's insignificant. That means nothing. And you're seeing that priced in today. That's not a significant amount.
Okay.
Doubling the amount they've pulled back.
Okay.
Cutting the amount in half that they've put out is very different than doubling what they're already doing because they're not doing anything. Yeah,
it's minimal. I mean, at the current pace, they're going to be done by September, I believe, of next year. It might have been August. I think it's going to accelerate. I think they're going to be done by March of the taper. Yeah. And the reason why that's important in my world is I believe the one thing that Powell said that will be true is he wants to finish taper first and then raise rates. I think one of the things they did last time with QE2 or whatever it was is they raised rates as they were finishing, and that double hit was painful for the market. So what do you think? Do you think they finish the taper first and then raise rates, or do you think they're trapped and they got to do both at the same time?
I think they're going to have to do a little of both at the same time. I think
that'll be different.
I think they're going to have to start moving rates up in Q1. Okay. Whether he says that or not on Wednesday will be, remain to be seen.
Yeah, what I'm looking for the Fed to acknowledge, again, this will be different. If Powell says we will consider rate raises by the summer of next year, that will be different for Powell. But then the dot plot, this whole stupid dot plot that they all measure, I think we're going to see a lot of Fed presidents like you in Q1. I don't think Powell says Q1, but when they release the dot plot, like the next day or whenever that comes out, you're going to see a lot of them go in Q1. And that's going to, again, talk about the great deleverage, and folks go back and listen to episode 1. So I think the Fed, and again, remember, we're in a global economy, as Greg talked about. We have 20 central banks meeting this week. And I think most of them are going to extract liquidity. I think there will be some that add, i.e. China. I think China has made some of the worst economic decisions here recently. So they're actually going to inject liquidity. But most of them are going to extract. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. China is on the verge of a big, problem in their real estate market that they have to do something about. So, they're going to have to do something, or they just delever.
Yeah. What
do I mean by delever? So, the debt is global. It's around the world. So we own China's debt. They own our debt, this, that, and the other. at some point you sit around the table and go, okay, we're all taking a haircut.
Right.
You know, rates have to go up. We have to get this under control. We're going to write down what we owe each other. You know, that's at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen at some point. The question is, when do we get there and what's the catalyst for that to happen? Now, on the other side of the table, there's also issues with Russia, you know, and China from, you know, the standpoint of war. That could change things.
Ooh,
So, you know, it's a tricky time right now.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I did a video last week or the week before about the 5 things that could surprise us in 2022, and one of them was international conflict. Right, we have Russia, and why am I drawing a blank on the country?
Yeah, Ukraine.
Think I'm like, why did I draw a blank? And then China and Taiwan, obviously.
Yeah, and the problem with Ukraine is if Russia goes in there, you know, where are they going to stop? And you know, so the rest of the world has stood up and said,
no. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Again, the question is, will Powell? I believe Powell has to turn into Paul Volcker, kind of like Alarian says, or he's going to be the worst Fed president ever. I have no confidence that he will, but we're going to find out Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, fascinating times. I think right now the markets are saying it's going to be mild. You know, and if he doubles the amount of the taper, that's really still insignificant. I mean, they're buying 100 billion a month. What did they start the taper at? 10?
Yeah, 10, I think. Yeah.
They pulled back 10, so they pull back 20. Now, if they say, hey, we're cutting the amount of purchases in half, that's significant.
That is that, and would, to your point, would be a surprise. Yes. Yeah. So again, folks, the Fed has worked for years. This is pre-Powell to tell the market what's coming. The few times they have surprised them, go back and look at the taper tantrum. It does happen, and when it does, whoo, there's some shockingly bad days. So
2018, 2019, he knows.
Yeah, he knows. He remembers. He was around. He was at Goldman, I think, at that time. So
and he had to, you know, he had to say, hey, you know, we made a mistake. I was wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So Greg, how can people find you?
Yep, gregdickerson.com. That's where all my info is. YouTube, podcast, everything's on gregdickerson.com.
Thanks, buddy.